Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
Welcome to the Jesse Blake Sports Report. Whether this is your first time here, your last time here, or somewhere in between, I appreciate that you're here today so that we can discuss Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning and why he is so unbelievably underrated. Nikita Kucherov does not receive enough love as he should. So I am here to discuss the discussion around Nikita Kucherov not receiving enough discussion. And there's two things I want to talk about today. One is why the world does not respect Nikita Kucherov as much as they should, the hockey world, I should say. And two, the numbers that back up why we should be talking more about Nikita Kucherov. So let's get into a couple of the reasons why the world does not look at Nikita Kucherov like they do in the likes of McKinnon and McDavid. And he needs more love, and he's not getting enough love. One, I think this one's very obvious, and John Cooper brought it up. The Tampa Bay Lightning play in Tampa. They're a team that is not in a traditional, quote-unquote, hockey market. And despite all of the winning that they have done over the last several years, the last 5 years, really, of their major runs, the 3 trips to the Stanley Cup final, the back-to-back cups, and all of that stuff, they don't get the national love that they do. And when asked about this, why Nikita Kucherov does not get the Hart Trophy love that he deserves, John Cooper said this: "We play most of our games 1,200 miles or whatever it is away from Toronto." And if that isn't the truth, then I don't know what is. If you play in a mecca like Toronto, obviously there's going to be more media attention on you as a player. And to the detriment or to just the lifestyle benefit of Kucherov, he does not get the media attention like an Austin Matthews would, or even if you just play in the Northeast, if you're a Bruin or if you're a Ranger and you're having the type of years that Kucherov has had, there would be so much more national attention. But because they play in Tampa, unfortunately, there just isn't that type of attention. And so I think that's one of the major big reasons is who the Tampa Bay Lightning are, and that leads into who they have been the last few years, and that is a very, very good, and some would say the best team of the last 5 years because they've won 2 cups. They've been to 3 finals. It's hard to argue with that. And they've done it through a team game. One thing you talk about when you talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning, you talk about how many weapons they are. It's an endless stream of weapons. They have Kuch, they have Stamkos, they have Point, they have Hedman, they have Sergachev, they have guys like Brandon Hagel, and all they've done all of these years is just recycle guys, bring stars in, stars ship out, and they have this great collection of superstars and high-end talent, and it's so difficult for one guy to stand out in that way because you're just surrounded by stars. And I even mentioned Vasilevsky. So when you have this giant collection of stars and all they've done throughout their entire runs to the finals is be a team and everybody's stepping in and being the star, and then somebody is the superstar that game and somebody scores the game-winning goal the next game, it's hard for one guy to be the focal point. And we'll get into the next reason of why Kucherov doesn't get enough love that he should. Kucherov doesn't want to be the focal point. I mentioned all of the guys, but Kucherov himself is an understated player. One, off the ice, doesn't care for the media attention, probably a reason he plays in Tampa, probably a reason he doesn't get the media attention he deserves. And two, his game is also understated. This is one of the most fascinating things that I was reading this weekend because Eduardo Encina of the Tampa Bay Times wrote a fantastic article, and it's titled, "Why Isn't Lightning's Nikita Kucherov Receiving More Hart Trophy Love?" And in it, he had a quote from Nick Paul. And Nick Paul said this: "With Kuch, his goal is to be as smooth as possible. He doesn't want to make it look like he's trying. So when he goes through 3 guys, he doesn't need to make an extra stick handle. He won't. It's all about being smooth and efficient. He's not going to do a toe drag and go through another guy's legs and then do a spinorama. He's still going through 2 guys, but it makes it look easy." That is so interesting. If you watch Kucherov's game, that's his whole thing. It's, I make things look easy. This is easy to me. I'm not doing fancy stuff. I am efficient with my hockey. And that's what makes him so special. That's why he's able to put up all of these points. But it hurts him. It hurts him from a marketing standpoint because Nikita Kucherov puts up all the points, does all the fancy stuff that everybody else does, but doesn't do it in a fancy way. He does it in the most simple way possible. And that's how he is off the ice, and that He's not pompous. He's not showy. He's so understated, and his game is also understated. So he doesn't go viral on Twitter with the spinorama. He's not in all the highlight reels scoring an amazing goal. He's just an efficient hockey player. And if you're learning to play hockey, it's somebody you should watch and learn from. But if you're trying to make highlight reels, how you can't talk about Kucherov because he just makes a great play every time, and it's boring to like the mainstream. That's so boring, but he's doing it so often. He puts up all the points like a superstar who's doing the fancy stuff. So he's very capable of all of that, but he chooses not to. And it's such an underrated portion of Nikita Kucherov's game. And I'm so happy Nick Paul said it so we can all know. And last thing about why Kucherov doesn't get the respect and that he's not talked about as much as he should be is a simple fact of the Lightning were fighting for a wild card spot for a long portion of this season. They're still fighting for that wild card spot, but right now, currently, as I'm recording this, they sit in a division spot in the Atlantic. They're third in the Atlantic in the standings, so they're currently out of the wild card spot. The conversation around them should be like, hey, a good team's doing good things. Who's the star on the good team? Kucherov is the star on the good team. He should get the love he deserves. And a team like the Colorado Avalanche with Nathan MacKinnon, and they've been in the top 4 of the league standings for a long time now. There's not like, oh, is this team good conversation. There's, hey, that team is good. Who's standing out on that team? And with the Lightning, there's been a lot of, do they still have it? Is this team good? Are they washed? Have they been through too many runs? Are they old and missing Vasilevsky early on? And the fact that they've been able to maintain where they are in the standings without Vasilevsky early on, now they have him back. And they struggled for a little bit. Now there's all these other conversations. Them just not being flat out good and high in the standings, it's hard to pick a Hart Trophy winner when the team's not very good. The last time you had a Hart Trophy winner from a team that wasn't very good is Taylor Hall, and people love to relitigate that Taylor Hall Hart Trophy because the Devils weren't that great that year. It's hard for voters and for fan bases to look at teams that are just middling for playoff spots or at the bottom or the mid standings and be like, hey, that guy on that team deserves a Hart Trophy, because they look at the team and they say that team isn't amazing, so how could they have the best player? So as the Lightning climb up the standings, we should see more talk of Kucherov in the Hart Trophy conversations. Let's get into the numbers that justify why he should be in the conversations that he's not in right now. And I think one thing we can just look to that's super easy is MacKinnon versus Kucherov, because MacKinnon right now is the front runner for the Hart Trophy. So everybody is kind of consensus agreed. NHL.com did a half-season voters poll on who should be the Hart Trophy. MacKinnon won that in a walk. Kucherov finished second, but only received one first-place vote. And if you look at the counting stats right now, it's a lot closer than you think. And if you look at the some of the extra stats, like primary assists, Kucherov is beating MacKinnon there. If you look at takeaways, like from a winger as opposed to a centerman, you have Kucherov beating MacKinnon in takeaways. And one thing I thought was fascinating is the gap between MacKinnon and Kucherov and their teammates. Currently, Nathan MacKinnon has 84 points. That is first in the league. Nikita Kucherov is second with 83 points. But next closest on the Tampa Bay Lightning is Braden Point. He has 52 points so far this season. That is a 31-point gap. Nathan MacKinnon's next closest teammate is Mikko Rantanen, who has 66 points. That is an 18-point gap. So you could argue there that Kucherov has been more valuable to his team because of the lack of support that he has had on the Lightning this season, just by that gap to Braden Point in the points race for his team. And if we're talking about points, and I'm saying that Kucherov should be in this conversation with the elites of the elites, and he's not been so far this season, and historically he should be. One thing I saw that was so interesting that the NHL Instagram account put out earlier this month was the top point scorer from the first week of the new year. So at the first week of the new year, so the 2024, 2023, 2022, blah, 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 who's leading the league in points at the top of the new year? And if you go from 2024 to 2017, those 6 seasons, only 2 players have been in the lead of points at the top of the new year. And those 2 players are Kucherov and McDavid. Kucherov led the new year in points in 2024, 2019, 2018. McDavid led the league in points at the top of the year in 23, 22, 20, and 2017. Kucherov was ahead of Connor McDavid at the top of the year in 3 of the last 7 years. And there's the only 2 players who've led the league in points 3 of those last 7 years at the top of January. And I just think he's right there. He's right there with the dude we regard as the best of the best because he is the best of the best, Connor McDavid. But Kucherov has been right there. And 3 out of the 4 times was ahead of McDavid. Eventually, McDavid passes him by the end of the season. Kucherov only has 1 Art Ross trophy out of those 7 years. Well, depending on how this year turns out, he could have 2 of the last 7, but in terms of those 6 years, he only has 1 of those 6. Draisaitl got 1 as well, and then McDavid has the other. But you see that he's been hanging around. He's been right there, and he should be in these conversations. And I mentioned him winning that Art Ross. That year in 2019, Kucherov also won the Hart Trophy. So my whole conversation here about the disrespect for Nikita Kucherov and how underrated he is, it's a relatively new phenomenon. And I wouldn't say it doesn't stem from that Hart Trophy, but there's a case to be made that there's a little fatigue around the Tampa Bay Lightning. And this is my final point on why we should be talking about Kucherov is he has a Hart Trophy. Like, he hasn't been disrespected in his entire career. Is when the Tampa Bay Lightning won the President's Trophy in 2019, they had a crazy season, and he led the league in points, and he was the leader on that team in terms of just offensive stats. We get 4 years removed from that. You look at the writers, you look at the media conversations, there's fatigue around the Lightning. There's fatigue around Kucherov and the entire Tampa Bay Lightning squad. The media doesn't look at it as like, oh, we got to get him one. It's like the Oscars. It's like when Leo didn't have an Oscar for all those years, and then they give him one for The Revenant, but the Oscar for The Revenant was really for like the Titanic and The Wolf of Wall Street and The Departed and everything he should have won for. If he had already gotten the Oscar for the Titanic or one of the many other great DiCaprio movies, does he get one for The Revenant? If Nikita Kucherov doesn't have his 2019 Hart Trophy, are we looking at the 2024 season, this season, as the we got to get Kucherov a Hart Trophy season? I think we are. I think we're looking at this in a different light. If he doesn't have this couple cups, the Hart Trophy, the Art Ross, if he's just having the breakout season now, you look at it in a different light. But that doesn't mean his season now isn't still impressive. You should be looking at it in that light, regardless of what's happened in the past. And I think there's a little fatigue with the media, with the Lightning, and with Kucherov. That is it. That's my spiel to you about Nikita Kucherov and how underrated he is. John Cooper likes to blame it on just Toronto and the fact that they don't play in Toronto and all that fun stuff. But there's a lot other things going on behind the scenes and in front of the scenes as to why Kucherov right now is very underrated and why he deserves more respect. Put some respect on his name. So that's it for me today. Thank you for being here. You could have been anywhere in the world. You should be watching or listening to this right now, and I appreciate you for that. I will be back very soon. Good night from Toronto.
And that is how it's done.
The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
Jesse Blake, the guy that likes to hear his name twice in one sentence. Sure, I know him. No, he doesn't have an ego at all.